Stephen King's wife literally pulled his career from the garbage can when she rescued his manuscript for Carrie, and it wouldn't be the only time the trash would save the king of horror. This is the evolution of Stephen King. The author of It and The Shining went on to sell over 300 million books, but the long walk to success was anything but easy, and it began in the early years. King's father deserted his family when Stephen was just 2 years old, leaving his mother Nellie to raise he and his brother as a single parent. Stephen began writing in high school, and by the time he graduated from the University of Maine in 1970, he was selling short stories to any magazine that would publish him, and working at an industrial laundromat to pay the rent on the trailer he shared with his wife Tabitha and their son Joe, who today is a successful horror author of his own. He eventually found work as a high school English teacher, but he never gave up his dream of writing, which eventually led to his first fame. King wrote 4 pages of the infamous shower scene from his breakthrough novel Carrie, then he threw them in the trash.
They're all gonna laugh at you!
He thought he wasn't capable of writing a realistic teenage girl, but after Tabitha pulled them out of the garbage, she insisted he finish the story, with her help, to add a woman's perspective. When Carrie was completed, publisher Doubleday agreed to buy it in 1973, but King almost missed the most important phone call of his life, since he had disconnected his phone lines in a desperate attempt to save money.
This machine just called me an asshole!
That wouldn't be a concern for much longer. The hardcover advance for Carrie was only $2,500, but after the paperback rights sold for $400,000 and Brian De Palma's hit movie made its telekinetic star a household name, the author was able to quit his job and focus on writing full-time. Over the next few years, King produced some of the most influential novels in the history of horror, from The Shining in 1977 to his apocalyptic epic The Stand the next year. But as his star continued to rise, the master of horror was plagued by personal demons. King's problems with alcohol began in the 70s. He was actually drunk when he delivered the eulogy at his mother's funeral, and you could see him dealing with his addiction through his work.
In my goddamn soul, just a glass of beer.
What'll it be?
As his wealth and fame grew in the 80s, King's addictions moved beyond alcohol into cocaine and prescription drugs. It didn't affect his work too badly since he released some of his greatest writing during this period. There's Cujo, which King claims he was too messed up to even remember writing, Pet Sematary, arguably his most terrifying novel, and his master's thesis on the horror genre, known as It. King also began to display a skill for non-scary stories when he released Different Seasons, a collection of 4 short novels that gave us The Shawshank Redemption and Stand By Me. But despite his professional success, Stephen's personal life was in a downward spiral, which came to a head when his family staged an intervention in 1987. They confronted him in his office and dumped his garbage can all over the floor. And when King saw all of the beer cans, cigarette butts, cocaine baggies, and pill bottles piled on his carpet, it finally pushed him to seek treatment for his addictions.
I never met a drink or a drug that I didn't like, and if I could take it, I took it.
His first post-sobriety novel was Needful Things in 1991. The author has remained clean ever since. Unfortunately, just a few years after turning his life around, it almost ended in tragedy, with a close call. On June 19, 1999, a distracted driver hit King with his minivan during one of the author's daily walks. King was thrown 14 feet, and the impact collapsed his lung and shattered his hip and right leg. The damage was so bad that doctors considered amputating the limb, but King's leg was saved after 5 surgeries and grueling physical therapy. After the accident, King rushed to complete his life's work, releasing the final novels in his epic Dark Tower series. The finale disappointed a lot of constant readers who'd been waiting to see the end of Roland's journey since 1982. His other output from this period, like Dreamcatcher and Cell, also failed to reach the same heights as his pre-accident work.
You dirty bird. How could you?
Fans began to wonder if King had lost his touch, and even the author himself admitted that good ideas weren't coming to him as often. He even considered retiring in 2002, but King finally returned to form at the end of the aughts, releasing the intricate Under the Dome, the gripping 11/22/63, and the hard-boiled Mr. Mercedes. And just as his writing mojo returned, a new generation of fans were introduced to King's work through 2017's blockbuster adaptation of It.
Beep, beep, Richie.
Between It Chapter 2, the new Pet Sematary, the upcoming Shining sequel, Dr. Sleep, and shows like Castle Rock that pay homage to the author's entire career, we're in the middle of a Stephen King boom that shows no signs of slowing down. Not bad for a man who recently entered his 70s and is still pumping out at least one new novel a year. While he's never really gotten the critical acclaim he deserves, with over 30 #1 bestsellers to his name, King remains one of the most prolific and popular writers in all of fiction, and his work is both a gateway to the rich tradition of horror and the much larger world of literature. Thanks for watching The Evolution of. We'd love to know who you want to see covered in future installments, so leave a comment below. And while you're down there, please subscribe to NowThis Entertainment.